Okay, so we are. Oh, not there. I want to do that. Okay. So we actually are in the section dealing with what's called the Mafside Zehirot. What are the things? What are those things that stop us, take us away, or an obstacle in taking responsibility for ourselves? So last week we started speaking about something called busyness, right? Getting too busy with everything that we can't actually focus on what we're meant to focus on. And at the end of that first section, because we're going to go into something, we're going to go into two other deterrents, but at the end of the section dealing with busyness, the Mesilat Yesharim says like this: for the Creator, blessed be He, who created the evil inclination, that's called in Hebrew the Yetzer Hara, also created the Torah as its antidote. As our sages of blessed memory have said, this is a quote from the Talmud, I've created the evil inclination and I have created the Torah as its antidote. The Aramaic's very interesting, the choice of language. It's always translated like this, but the actual Aramaic is Barati Yetzer Hara, I created the evil inclination, Barati lo, and I created for it Torah Tavlin, the Torah as a spice, as a way of correcting it, a way of channeling it. So he says, based on that, he says, well, if a person learns Torah, the very act of learning Torah has a positive effect on a person, that it weakens one's evil inclination and it focuses one in the right path. And he says an interesting thing. He says there's a verse in Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah 6:11, it shouldn't be 6:111. Jeremiah obviously is the prophet of doom, right? He's the prophet of when the temple's being destroyed and he's screaming at the people, correct your ways, God's going to destroy the temple. And nobody's listening. So in one of his prophecies, he says, because your fathers deserted me, declares the Lord, and followed other gods and served them and worshiped them. And here are the important words that we want to focus on. They deserted me and my Torah, they did not guard, which in the Hebrew is va'oti azavu, me, they deserted, ve'et Torati lo shamaru, and my Torah they did not guard. Now, the Midrash has a question. What do you mean? Isn't God and the Torah synonymous? That's what it says in the Zohar, right? The God and his Torah is one. What would it mean that you have left me and you did not guard my Torah? Isn't that the same thing? What are the two things going on over here? So the Midrash has this incredible answer, and it says like this: but if they toil in the Torah, talking about the Jewish people, when they see its ways, oh, hang on a second. No. Oh, yes. Okay. So let me just give you a bit of context here. So this is the Mesilat Yesharim, our book that we're studying. And he says like this: but if they toil in the Torah, when they see its ways, commandments, and warnings, behold, eventually a renewal will awaken within them, which will bring them to a good path. So watch out, everyone. We're in trouble. we might be brought to the good path if we keep on with this class long enough. And he says, this is what our sages of blessed memory have said, and it's in the Midrash. Would that it were that they abandoned me but kept my Torah, for the light within it would bring them back to the good. Right? So it's a very interesting statement. It's very radical, actually, right? It's radical because it basically is saying that Torah and Torah study is kind of a safeguard, however unspiritual you might be, right? You might find yourself far from God, not having a connection, not being very aware of God, not having that personal relationship with God that we are meant to form and develop. But yet, the very act, there's something in the Torah that it has light. It has this energy, this light, which brings us back to good. So that's the meaning of the verse in Jeremiah. It's based on this verse. They have left, they deserted me and my Torah they did not guard. So it's as if the Lord God is saying, one thing to desert me, but to then leave the Torah, I don't know what to do anymore. If they would just keep my Torah, it would be, I'm willing to take the insult, says God, because the Torah will bring them back to good. So, and he includes in that this topic that we're talking about, which is taking responsibility for oneself, taking what is important in life, making that important, keeping one's priorities and ethics and morals in perspective and importance. Actually, I heard a very interesting idea this last week in terms of Sinai and really the covenant that we made with God. And if you think about it, what in the world of leaders and vassals, there's always some sort of an agreement. There's always some sort of a back and forth, right? The vassals have to pledge allegiance to the leader, to the king. And they got to work. And, in some kingdoms, you work very hard, and some less, but you work for the king. And God comes along to the Jewish people and says, I'll be your king. I'll be your king. And what do I ask of you? And he says, an ethical and moral life. That's what I'm asking. That's the commitment. That's our part in the covenant. Okay, so that is the end of this first section. So taking life seriously means considering one's ways. One obstacle we have is we get too busy, right? And we don't take time to consider our ways. And obviously that what we need to do is take time to do that. And he's saying over here that, one should learn Torah. Torah will bring you to, that's the beginning of this whole ladder. Torah will bring us to Zihirut, to taking responsibility for ourselves. Now, he goes on and he says, there's something else. There's something else which will stop us from thinking about our ways, and that's called cynicism. In Hebrew, it's called leitzanut. I remember my Hebrew name is Nitsan, which, by the way, as my mother could tell you, but I'll tell you the story. I'm a twin. I'm a twin, and we were born, and my parents came up with our English names before our Hebrew names. So I'm Nicholas, and my brother is Paul. You can ask my mother why she came up with such a name, but that's what she did. Right? So Nicholas and Paul. And then they decided, well, what are their Hebrew names? So they went to the rabbi and they said, Rabbi, we've decided to call our boys Nicholas and Paul. What are their Hebrew? What's Hebrew for Nicholas and Paul? So he said, well, Paul's easy because Paul is Shaul, right? Shaul is Paul. I think that goes way back to, St. Paul. And, he was.
They changed his name from Saul to Paul.
Yeah, Saul to Paul, right? But he said, Nicholas, I don't know if there's a Hebrew for Nicholas. So he said, but there's a very nice name I heard recently in Israel, Nitsan, means a blossom or a bud. And, that kind of would be close to Nicholas. So that's why I'm Nitsan. Actually, I like my name. I think the head of...
Even I like his name.
Thank you.
Even I've got used to calling him son.
I think the head of the very left anti-religious party in Israel is a guy called Nitsan Horowitz. So it's a well-known name now in Israel, and there's a girl's version as well, Nitzana, and some women are also called Nitsan. It's quite a fluid name. Okay, anyway, so why am I telling you this funny story? Because I have a stender, one of these wooden things that you put your book on, and on the top it says Nitsan, my name. It's got my name on it. And a friend of mine in Yeshiva, actually I can't remember who it was, but he crossed out the N and he put a lamed. So it says Leitzan, and Leitzan means the cynic, right? He called me. Oh. So my stender has Leitzan on it. Anyway, cynicism. The second.
Hang on, isn't Leitzan is also a comedian, a comic?
Yes, a
clown.
Yes, a clown. Yes,
a clown, as opposed to a cynic. Yeah.
So it's
Makes fun.
Makes
fun. Like a cynic.
Yeah.
But none of those apply to our rabbi. I'm sorry.
There you go, Linda. Thank you. So the second, let's see what he says. The second detrimental factor, cynicism, is very severe. For one who is immersed in it is like one immersed in a great sea from which it is difficult to escape. It's hard once you become a cynic not to be a cynic. King Shlomo said, peace be upon him, I said of laughter, it is madness, and of merriment, what use is it? And the sages of blessed memory said, laughter and lightheadedness habituate a person to illicit relations. Serious stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So sincerity, right? Sincerity is key, right? To be sincere, to be I don't know if it's synonymous with being serious, but sincerity does have an aspect of seriousness, that you take life and people in a very sincere and serious way. There's a beautiful, actually, in the book of Kings, Malachim, it has a beautiful section when King Solomon, Shlomo, takes over from his father David, and he makes a prayer. He says to God, grant then your servant, he's speaking about himself, Leiv Shomea, grant me a listening heart to judge your people, to distinguish between good and bad, for who can judge this vast people of yours? And I'm actually going to go to the link because I want you to hear what God answered. So the Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. And God said to him, can you see it? Do you want me to make it a bit bigger?
Okay, we can see it.
Okay. And God said to him, because you asked for this, And you did not ask for long life. You did not ask for riches. You did not ask for life of your for the life of your enemies, but you asked for discernment in dispensing judgment. I now do as you have spoken. I grant you a wise and discerning mind. That's why he became the wisest of all people, right? There have never been anyone like you before, nor will anyone like you arise again. And I also grant you what you did not ask for, both riches and glory all your life, and like which no king has ever had. And I will further grant you long life, and I will, if you walk in the ways, my ways, and observe the laws and commandments, as did your father David. And Solomon awoke, it was a dream, and then he went to Jerusalem, stood before the ark, and he made some sacrifices, and etc., etc. And that's the end of the, and then is the story of the two women that come with the baby, and they say, you know, each one's claiming it's mine, right?
Rabbi,
So yes.
is that why there's so many Shlomos?
Yeah. It's from King Shlomo, yeah.
That's interesting because it is a very popular name.
It is. I have one myself.
So do I.
Okay. Rav Yitzchak Hutner, of blessed memory, well known to Uri's grandfather, roommate, right? Roommate, yes, something, right? The cynic sees the crack in every wall, right? That's the power.
Who was he related to?
Go on, Uri. Oh, you're muted, by the way.
Oh, really?
No, Uri's muted.
I'm sorry. My grandfather, who was a Rosh Yeshiva in the Slabodke Yeshiva, was part of a kollel in the 1905 to 1915 timeframe, and he shared he shared a room with Rav Hutner and several other people who became very illustrious Rabbonim in Israel and in America. Unfortunately, my grandfather was killed by the Nazis, so he died in 41. He was killed in 41. Hutner came to the States, to Israel, to America, yeah, whatever.
So he writes, the cynic sees the crack in every wall, right? There are problems and there are cracks, but is that going to be your focus? Just in case you want some other quotes, Oscar Wilde, what is a cynic? A man who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. Right?
Rabbi,
yes.
doesn't cynicism come from disappointment? A person's disappointed in things, and therefore he doesn't handle it.
Yes, it can stem from that. I saw a quote. I don't know who said it, but he said, but inside of every cynic is a disappointed ideologist,
Yeah,
right?
Disappointed.
Yeah, because if you keep on getting, when you hit your head against the wall so many times, you start to give up hope, right? And then you become cynical. So yes, you can build. Cynicism can develop. Cynicism for sure can develop. And I guess in that sense, Avram, it might be a lack of faith.
might be what? Sorry.
A lack of faith. Right, to give up hope. Okay. So says back in our book, the Mesilat Yesharim, for just like a shield smeared with oil deflects and drops arrows from him, causing them to fall to the ground, preventing them from reaching the body of the man, so too is levity before rebuke and reprimand. Right? You can't, someone makes it's very hard. They're not going to take it. They're not going to listen. Nothing goes in, nothing sinks in because everything's a joke. It's a beautiful, beautiful parable. Okay. Now, saying that, I do think I would like to spend the rest of our time actually discussing the role of cynicism and humor in Judaism, because we are not a very, Jews are known to have good wit, and there's definitely a place for that within Judaism.
I think they have a great wit.
Yeah, that's reason.
Oh, I think you said they didn't.
No, they do sometimes, Donna. Right? Right? So there's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says like this. Rav Nachman says, all types of, now, sorry, I didn't change the translation, but the word is leitzanuta, which is the Aramaic for leitzanot, for cynicism, mockery. All types of mockery are forbidden, except for mockery of idol worship, which is permitted. Right? So,
Please.
right? All mockery, all cynicism is forbidden, except for the cynicism of idol worship, which is permitted, as it says. And okay, it's an interesting proof. It's talking about idols. They crouch down, they stoop. They could not hold back the burden. It's almost like putting them on the bathroom, these idols. So what's the idea? The idea is that the truth must be guarded, and we shouldn't be too cynical about the truth. But falsity and idolatry is a matter for mockery, because we are in a world where we discern, right? We discern what's true and we discern what's false. And if something's false, it's okay, if not good, to make jokes about it, so that we don't take it so seriously, right? It's a way of guarding from it. There's a very famous Rabbi Hirsch. Rabbi Hirsch was a German rabbi in the 1800s. He was famous because he was the first rabbi, I think, in Germany, maybe in the whole of Europe, that decided to break from the main kehila. Right? There was, in every town, there was the shul and the kehila, and it was, especially Jews who were ghetto-sized, I don't know if that's a word, Jews put in the ghetto, they often were left pretty much to self-government, right? They had to pay a huge tax normally to the non-Jewish whatever, king, duke or whatever, but they were left to themselves, and the non-Jews were like, listen, you guys deal with yourself, just make sure at the end of the month you pay us out, your tax. And that became the kehila, that became the community, and it was run in with leadership, the rabbis, different members, etc., etc. So Rabbi Hirsch, he decided to break from that. Actually, it was a very revolutionary idea, and came under a huge amount of criticism. But he was living in a time which we call the Enlightenment, the Haskalah, which was very bad for orthodoxy. Right? People were leaving religion in droves, and he saw no way to fight this besides becoming independent. So he made his own independent congregation, Kehila, and he's less known for that, by the way, because that was, that's, I don't know why he's less known for that, but what he's more well known for is that he really espoused a philosophy of what's called Torah im derech eretz, which means Torah and worldliness, Torah and working. The modern Orthodox world that we know today is very much a child of Rabbi Hirsch's thinking, because he came along and said, okay, we are emancipated. We're allowed to study everything. We're allowed to engage in all these occupations. Well, let's do that as Jews, right? There's no contradiction, right?
Rabbi,
Yes.
you know, in shul this week, while I read the English while they're reading the Parsha, and Rabbi Hirsch is quoted all the time.
Yeah.
He is in our Chumash constantly.
Yeah.
So
He has a wonderful, really beautiful commentary on the Torah. So one of his comments is when the Jews leave Egypt, so they leave Egypt and then they get to the sea, the Yam Suf, the Reed Sea and the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are pursuing from behind, and there are mountains on either side, and they're really stuck. And it looks like this is their end. And they turn around to Moses and they said to Moses, was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness?
Cynicism.
What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? And Rabbi Hirsch says, this was cynical. Don't take it too seriously. Come on, right? But he says, cynicism has always allowed Jews to manage crisis a little better and take the edge of crisis, right? Because that's one of the uses of cynicism. So there's a very wonderful book actually by excellent author Joseph Telushkin. Most of us are familiar with him, right? And he wrote a book, Jewish Humor, which has good Jewish jokes in it. But it's an interesting book because it's really what the best Jewish jokes say about the Jews, right? That was his insight. And I was looking, I thought I had the book. Did one of you borrow it? Okay. Right?
It's cynical. Cynical
Just gonna
remark.
say.
But what I found was a comment on the book that I wanted to find an example. But lastly, I recommend this book to everyone interested in philosophy and bettering themselves because of how humor reveals our values and who we are. So I couldn't help myself, right? So sharing one joke, and then I'm going to ask you what it tells us about ourselves, right? A group of 5 Jewish women are eating lunch in a busy cafe. Nervously, their waiter approaches the table. Ladies, he says, is anything okay?
Very good.
Because we catch him at everything. Or, I mean, Jackie Mason had that whole shtick about
Yeah, he was great.
that the eggs had to be this way and the toast had to be on a separate plate, and it was hysterical, but it wasn't really funny because it makes us sound like we're very spoiled.
We're perfectionists.
Picky.
We're picky. We're perfectionists. Jewish, that's in our DNA.
It's
Right?
vanity.
We're
Okay.
perfectionists.
And I'm really Jewish.
Hashem said we need to perfect ourselves, so that's the way we're doing it.
And there you go, Doc. Excellent, right? We have to perfect. If we're not perfectionists, how can we perfect the world?
There you go.
Excellent. You see, beautiful. Okay, so I think at the end of the day, like Rav Simcha Bunim of Peshiska said, keep 2 pieces of paper in your pocket at all times. On one, I am a speck of dust, and the other, the world was created for me. And the wisdom.
What for me? Sorry.
The world was created just for me.
Oh, it was created. Thank you.
And I think that's somewhat, but that's the wisdom of life. One has to know when to be a cynic, right? I'm a speck of dust. And when not to be a cynic and to take things very seriously and sincerely. The world was created for me. And if we can find that wisdom, we'll, I think the Mesilat Yesharim will be very happy with us that we are on the right path. Questions, comments, alternate jokes?
So,
Yeah.
so a son goes to visit his mother, and the mother gives him a red tie and a blue tie. And he says to his mother, "Mom, thank you so much. How'd you know? I love ties and I needed no ties. That was so thoughtful of you." So the next morning, he comes downstairs and he says, "I'm going to surprise my mom. I'm going to wear the red tie so she feels good." He comes into the kitchen. He goes, so the mother says, "So you didn't like the blue tie?"
But that's just like the restaurant joke.
Exactly. That's what made him think of it. But I will tell you, I am not good with humor.
You are one of the most sincere people I know, Linda, which is you. And
I
that's
know.
really beautiful. That's fine.
I don't like jokes. I feel like if you sometimes you say it, if you have to say it's a joke, that's not funny. I don't like that.
I don't like Jewish jokes being told by non-Jews.
Well, yes, so it's like
That
you're
really upsets me when a non-Jew tells a Jewish joke because they can never get the intonation or the feel about it. I don't know. That's my theory on it.
Yeah, well, maybe
Mhm.
they're not looking for what it says about the Jews necessarily. Right? All right.
Rabbi, don't you find the joke about is anything all right offensive?
No, it's funny. It's exactly what Saul said. We're perfectionists. If we're not perfectionists, how can we perfect the world? We accept it. We embrace it. Yes, and sometimes we need to laugh at it because it goes too far. Right? Whenever I do a wedding, I always say when I meet with the chassan and kala before, hopefully months before, I say to them, listen, remember one thing that will get you through this. All you need is a cup of wine, a ring, and a rabbi. The rest is luxury.
The rest is?
Extras, luxury. Right? You're gonna get married. You can drive yourself crazy in making sure that every single flower is in its right position and this one, and
What about the ketubah?
Yeah, okay, we need ketubah too. that the rabbi brings. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is taking us into interesting topics and discussions, but very good. Thank you all for.
Laurie, does anyone ever tell you you have a slight resemblance to Deborah Lipstadt?
I don't know who that is.
You don't know
yeah.
Deborah Lipstadt?
Absolutely right. You're absolutely
Doesn't she in a way?
does.
Look her up.
I don't know.
You don't see it a little bit?
I don't know who Deborah Lipstadt.
Am I
She's a-
saying her name wrong? Because everyone should know her. She's running to become the she's running to handle anti-Semitism nationally, and President Biden nominated her, but Republicans and Democrats can't agree because of certain things she has written and tweeted, and now
Okay.
I will look her up. Thank you, Linda. I will check her out.
she is an amazing human being. I am shocked none of you know her.
That's not true. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
She's a
And you agree,
she's a major figure.
And you agree
She's,
that Laurie looks like her?
Do you think so?
Sure.
Not a
I
little
agree.
bit. Well, because she has reddish hair too, and she
That's
wears
right, that's-
glasses. I mean, it's a compliment. So go look.
Okay, I'll look her up.
And also, just let me tell you something. Do I look like
Linda Howitz.
no, Rochelle Walensky, the CDC person?
A little bit hairstyle,
Oh,
coloring.
not bad. Not bad.
So people say that I look like her, and Stephen and I are walking down the street, and I'm in front with my girlfriend, and he's walking behind with the guy, and they're sitting outside, and oh my gosh, can you believe it that Rochelle Walensky just walked by? My husband goes by, goes, nope, that's just my wife.
Very good.
So there's humor, even though I'm not very good with humor.
Well, your
Yeah.
husband is. Okay, everyone. Norma, wishing you a full shlema. May you feel better and may it pass soon. And may you not pass it on to anyone else.
Who?
Norma,
Thank you, everyone.
Norma got COVID, unfortunately.
Oh,
Okay.
Norma, I'll
Yeah, just-
call you when we're done with this, Norma. I'll ring you.
Just in case you thought the pandemic was over. God bless you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.